Hello.
Hi. So we're actually doing this.
I didn't spend 2 hours setting up to not do this. What are we doing?
So, well, first I think we should say what I'm good at this. I'm very good at this. So welcome to the Engineer and the Illustrator podcast. I'm the illustrator, he's the engineer.
Is this a podcast?
I'm assuming it's at least going to exist in some podcast form.
I believe it's a podcast, but if you're watching on video, it's more than a podcast.
Yes. So,
Okay.
I'm Sam, they, them, and
I'm Spencer, he, him.
we decided to do this on a whim.
We're related.
For that.
It's all my fault.
It is all his fault. You might know my dad from Kinetic Precision, Spencer Webb NH on Instagram, if you're part of the machining community.
Spencer _Webb_NH.
All right, Mr. Smarty Pants. You probably know him at the very least. You may or may not know me. I'm responsible for the KP logo design. I'm responsible for the stickers and the shirts, and generally being the artist that he doesn't want to be.
That's what we pay artists for. We write checks.
Outsourcing.
You send invoices, I write checks. I know how this is done.
Yeah. And well,
here we are. Why are we here? What are we talking about?
We're mostly talking about what the hell we're doing here.
Well, first of all,
not to go in circles or anything, but
you entitled this the
Engineer the Illustrator.
The Engineer and the Illustrator, and for the last 2 hours, we spent figuring out video. We figured out ways it didn't work, and then we figured out ways it did work. So in case you're curious, we're on an iPad recording right now.
Yeah.
And then we figured out audio, which is a separate deal.
Oh, totally separate.
And that was an hour. And we have 2 mics, and we're probably doing some magic in post-processing.
And if we ever have to do this remotely, it's going to be another 2 hours to figure it out.
Yeah, it won't be as much fun remotely, but so here we are. So the engineer in the team
did most of that work.
And the artist will take most of the credit, which is okay.
I'm taking no credit. I'm actually giving you all the credit for figuring that out because you're the one who owns all this.
It's all a write-off.
Tax deductible.
What does that mean? No, it's a write-off.
I don't know things.
So the good news is how much money did we spend to go from zero to recording this? Nothing.
Zilch.
Zippo. So we had all the stuff. But here we are.
Yeah. I think so for context, this came as a random idea. I bounce ideas off him as a sounding board quite often because I am attempting to learn the art of, freelancing. Yeesh. And technically,
I've been a freelancer for, at least 25 years.
Longer than I've been alive.
Yeah. In fact, you had a project number. I don't know if you know that. There's a file upstairs. You're a project. Investment in, return on investment out.
Is my birth certificate in there, or did you lose that?
No, we had to give that to the folks at the special facility.
Oh, no.
Anyway,
there's a lot of humor like this. We just kind of go back and forth. We're both nerds. We're both, we share a single brain cell. He has it most of the time. Debatably. He often hands it off to my mom, who uses it to save the world. And we're not going to specify the manner in which she saves the world. But she saves the world multiple times a day.
And if you're listening to this, you should go say thank you.
What are you?
I'm just checking. Go ahead.
You're just checking?
Yeah.
You're just checking the thing? You're picking up the mic ominously and checking?
Yeah.
Checking?
So I think the title of this podcast is appropriate.
Yeah. We're kind of just...
Because I think in some respects, an illustrator and an engineer are complementary.
Yes, I would agree. I think there's... I mean, the original idea for this was I just kind of wanted to have a project that we could do together that was low effort, that would benefit both of us in, being able to exercise some creative outlet, as well as being something that we could just bounce and have fun with it.
But what I mean is, an engineer, I know a lot of engineers.
A lot of engineers.
and that is often a problem. And I know some engineers that are outstanding engineers, but they have difficulty communicating and communicating an idea.
That is...
my engineering gig is antennas. So I have to explain antennas to my clients who are not antenna people, and that is a challenge. So I have to be a good communicator. But an illustrator, by definition...
Yeah, our entire shtick is, communicating an idea visually.
Communicating. It's all communicating.
It's all communication.
So I think there's a lot of complementary
facets. We'll go with facets.
We'll go with that.
Yeah, it's sort of this was, I think we're both very spur of the moment people, so this was a very spur of the moment decision. You literally said we could set this up today and over lunch, and I was like, you want to do it? Let's do it.
And we did it.
And we did it. And now we're here. We're recording. We're wondering if this is how sustainable this particular setup is. But
we'll find out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. I like the idea of us just kind of figuring this out live, and that's...
Well, we're live.
We're live.
They're not live.
Well, they're alive, presumably.
They're alive, but they're not here.
Presumably they're alive. If they're not alive and they're still listening to this, then we have a problem with a lich and a necromancer, and that is not something I am prepared to deal with.
I can get one.
No. Battle axes. Battle axes.
Battle axes for me. We'll get to that later. So, I do a live on Instagram and YouTube right now, simultaneously, every Sunday. It's for the engineering community. For the machining community. And it's called the PFG, IG, and YouTube Live. And it's a different experience doing it live.
Yes, it is very different.
You get a lot of feedback. You have a plan.
Oh, the plan?
And then that plan lasts about 12 minutes.
No plan survives first contact with the enemy.
That's true.
You're the one who taught me that.
It's absolutely true.
He's checking things again. I used to very regularly post art to Instagram under the username Conjette.art. That is CONJETTE.ART. And that Instagram account and the subsequent Facebook account and all that is still technically there. It's just not active. I'm on an indefinite hiatus from that side of social media, though I do have a semi-active Twitter and I'm ramping up activity on my own website, which is also Conjette.art.
Conjette.art?
Conjette.art.
And then you designed so recently we did stickers for my machining business.
Yes.
Now this is weird. So in the machining community, the Instagram, specifically the Instagram machining community, but also the YouTube machining community, there's this pretty healthy exchange of information, but there's also this sticker thing going on.
Yeah, you slap a sticker on your machines.
Right. So everybody has stickers, and you ask for stickers, you get stickers, you trade stickers, but I didn't have stickers. Well, I had stickers, but they were wimpy. They were just the logo. So
Which I still designed the logo for you. You're
did.
welcome.
So we did a little project.
Yeah.
And Sam designed, I think we went with essentially 5 new stickers.
There are a total of 5 new stickers. The first session we did 4 new stickers. Because the 5th one in your kind of sticker pack thing was just going to be the logo die cut sticker that you enjoy so much. And then the other thing that we did was not a sticker, it was a label, as you kept insisting while we were on call. And that is specifically for your shipping and your packing materials. And you wanted to have that customized just a little bit.
So we're up to about 6 new designs, right?
Basically. And so what we did, and yes, I do offer this as a service, just to be cheeky about it. What we did was we sat down on, I think initially it was Discord and eventually it was just FaceTime or Zoom or whatever. We sat down, I opened my iPad, I opened up Procreate, and I said, okay, let's brainstorm. What do you want to get out of this design? So, what do you want put on it? And what sort of motifs are we working with? What kind of colors? Are we working with your logo specifically? Are we working with a saying? What elements am I putting together for what purpose? And that is sort of the basis of any kind of commission work that I do is, what is this for? What are you trying to communicate? And what elements do you want me to use in order to communicate that? It's the same thing for any sort of character illustration I do. Any sort of I also do emotes and emoji packs for Discord and Twitch.
I think I need an emoji pack.
You have a Discord server that you do not use, which you should be using, and I will happily help set that up for you. But it's the sort of thing where if you're working with stuff live, and you're streaming live, I don't know if YouTube has custom emotes built in yet, but I know it's a thing on Twitch and I know it's a thing on Discord. You can, your subscribers, your followers, whatever, can use these custom emotes in the chat, and it's very fun. You oftentimes get people making these emotes that out of inside jokes for the community, and it just boom, instant visual representation of this inside joke, and everyone starts laughing. But it's at the basis of what I do, as far as commission illustrations and commission work in general, it is just
this place is not haunted, in case you heard that.
We are doing this in our living room at the moment, so this is not exactly not exactly a private area. At the basis of any commission stuff I do, it is about a communication of ideas, which is something that, as you were saying earlier, not everyone is good at. I try to be good at it. I think the important thing is that understanding understanding what you want to get out of what is being made informs more of what you're trying to communicate than anything else. It's like with technical drawings, because I've been told, for context, my aunt, his sister, is a marine biologist, and she's told me multiple times that I should try anatomical drawing of fish, and that should be a thing I should try. And that's a very different type of representation of ideas, right? Because with technical drawings and with anatomical drawings and medical drawings and all that, you're supposed to be very factually representing this sort of structure, whether biological or mechanical, and how it works, and being very clearly visually representing the facts of it. There's no interpretation. That's not something I enjoy. I like having a little bit of leeway in interpretation because that's the fun of it, right?
Well, it's funny you should bring that up because in engineering and in machining, we spend a lot of time with drawings.
Yeah.
And those drawings, you can do a good drawing, and you can do a terrible drawing.
The amount of times I've seen you just puttering around on Fusion 360 trying to get something right.
Exactly. Well, so in electronics, there's schematics, which is a diagram of a circuit.
Yeah.
In mechanicals, there's a mechanical drawing, which is here's how you make this part, or here's how you put together this assembly. And I'm here to tell you, there's a good way to make those drawings, and there's lots of bad ways to make those drawings.
And then that's not even getting into patent stuff.
Yeah, patents are totally different. But just
Yeah.
communicating how to make a thing, which, a medical drawing, an anatomical drawing, isn't how to make the thing, but
It's how it's structured.
This is how the thing is, right?
Yeah.
It's not, there's no emotion.
Yeah.
It's lacking emotion, right? It's lacking, I'm going to say something controversial, it's lacking politics.
I am not going to disagree with that. I'm going to actually disagree with the emotion bit. Because for certain mechanical drawings, or like architectural drawings and things where it's like, this is the way I'm designing this thing, oftentimes whoever's designing this thing, whether it is a mechanical doodad or it's a space or whatever, there is a certain style and a certain care that gets put into these drawings, especially if they're being made traditionally. I feel like that gets lost sometimes in the digital world, but it can be recaptured. But when you look at older traditional diagrams and designs, and you realize that somebody had to go in with a ruler and a pen and do every single one of those lines by hand, that's when I think I would disagree with it being emotionless.
So I agree with you in that there are styles.
Yeah.
And there's good ways. In fact, we have this term of art in engineering called design intent. So you could make a drawing for a part or make a schematic for a circuit, and it could be factually correct. But it doesn't transmit the intent of the designer. Like, this part's real important, that part's not that important. Or, this part's an inch thick and this part's 2 inch thick, versus this part's an inch thick and this part has to be exactly 1 inch thicker than that part. Those two things sound like the same.
They're not the same.
They're not the same.
They're not.
And the difference is what we call design intent.
Yeah.
And I think you could say that that's an analogy to the emotional message of a piece of artwork.
Yeah. I mean, I go to a fine arts school. Ironically, illustration, which is what I do, isn't considered a fine art by most fine arts
Which
institutions.
I find hysterical.
Oh, believe me, it is something that I am... I could go on a rant, but I'm not going to go on a rant. I'm going to calmly discuss this. It's something that actually affects my schooling, because there are illustration classes offered at my university that I am not able to take because I am part of the fine arts program. I can take drawing classes. Drawing and illustration are not the same thing. I can take painting classes. I could take design classes, and even graphic design classes, which only recently began becoming considered a fine art. However, one of the things that my school is part of a consortium of a bunch of different art schools in the area where I go to school. I go to school in Boston, so it's called the Pro Arts Consortium. And I can cross enroll at other schools, no extra cost of tuition, all the credits transfer automatically. It's a great setup because it means I get to take classes that I might not otherwise be able to take. So I actually am cross-enrolling in a specific class called Game Design for Artists. It is effectively how do you make art for video games. I'm very excited about it. And it is, but that's not considered a fine art, despite the fact that the industry is huge. And that's something that maybe we'll talk about in another time. But, as far as art and the emotional message of art, that's it's not purely a fine arts thing, but it is something that is very much taken into account when you're talking through process making something for a fine arts institution. Because oftentimes it's one of those things where people are like, why is this considered like worth $1 million when it's like a modern art piece that's literally a yellow square on a canvas, right? It's not even, the point isn't that it's a yellow square on a canvas. The point is the process and the political message, or like the academic message, which whether or not you give a shit about that is totally up to you. Because frankly, you may not value it at, however many dollars it's valued at in a museum, but the academics value it like that, and they're the ones in charge of the museum.
And the academics are the ones that can't afford it.
They're still paying off graduate school.
Right.
So like it's a balance, like anything. There's a balance, and it's one of those things where I try to appreciate skill, like the technical skill in any given craft, even if I don't necessarily understand that craft. Mm-hmm. Because I don't understand a single thing about machining, despite having lived within 500 feet of a machine shop for my entire life.
500?
I thought that was the number you gave me when you first told me that little factoid.
No, you...
200 feet.
Try 100 feet.
Yeah, we'll
100 feet.
100 feet. Living within 100 feet of a machine shop for my entire life, I understand zero about machining. You would expect otherwise.
I would beg to differ. I think you understand way more than you think you understand. For example,
I understand.
Please define the term garage.
A place to put heavy machinery, including but not limited to vehicles, because that's considered heavy machinery.
When have you seen a vehicle in a garage?
At other people's houses.
At other people's houses.
On that wall, sitting, I'm facing one of the walls in our house, and it is a wall that, it extends across the entire length of our house. But beyond that wall is the garage, and on the upstairs, it's Dad's office, and that entire third of the house is just for him and his toys, and Mom needed that separation, otherwise she was going to go crazy.
And there are locks on the doors.
There is a reason there are locks on the doors.
My question, and I've talked to several architects about this, is why does it lock from that side? Like, I can't get back into the house. Is that...
You have to go out through the machine shop, and then you realize, oh, I'm covered in oil.
I see.
And coolant.
Because Mom never explained that to me, why the locks were that way, but I accepted it.
Yeah. It's...
So, getting back to my objection, Your Honor, I believe you actually know more about it than most people.
I think I understand enough to be able to step into the world and navigate on what I know. I don't know enough to start engaging with it in a meaningful fashion.
I could say the same thing about... Hang on.
Hang on. Brain.
I was trying to decide if I was going here. I could say the same thing about the kind of art you do. See how careful I was? Because I also have an art.
Yeah.
I do photography.
Yeah.
That's art.
That is a form of art that you engage in, that a lot of people engage in, but it's a lot more subtle and more technical than a lot of people realize.
But I don't think I could pick up a pencil or an iPad and do quite, do the things you do. I can't do it. So
should we do a crash course episode at one point where I try to teach you how to draw?
Oh, that would be very funny.
I think we're doing that at some point.
Write it down.
Notes app.
Teach Dad how to draw.
Oh god. He's going for the time old 3x5 note card and a pen. This is how he keeps his lists. He literally 3D printed a little thing that holds just 3x5 note cards and a pen thing. He'll hold it up to the camera for our YouTube viewers. And all he ever does is he'll take a note card and he'll write like a to-do list for the day. He'll write notes on it. He doesn't have a notebook. He just uses file cards. It's the most infuriating thing because they go everywhere, and if you lose it, it's gone forever.
You're very close to the truth. How was that nice? Was I nice that way?
You're attempting. Passive aggressive.
Yeah, I'm passive aggressive.
Aggressive.
Sometimes just plain aggressive. ¿Por qué no los dos?
¿Por qué no los dos?
So I use 3x5 file cards. They have a purpose, and their goal in life is to get shredded. So they have a finite life, whereas notebooks you keep forever, and I use both.
True.
But there are things that I write on 3x5 file cards that I don't need to keep this forever. And when the card's used up, it goes into the shredder. So that's the difference. But I 3D printed a holder for my 3x5 file cards. Is that art or is that engineering?
Yes.
I like it.
I appreciate the fact that it's bright orange, so you can find it.
Yeah, that was a design choice.
It was definitely a design choice and not based on the colors of filament that you had readily available.
We don't discuss that.
We don't talk about that.
What has 3D printing done for art?
It's a new medium. So, of the various media that you can engage in and the various forms of art you can engage in, one of those forms is 3D art, often referred to as sculpture art, but also extends to, nowadays, digital sculpting and 3D animation, which I actually recently listened to a very interesting talk. I listened to it this morning because it was released today by an artist and teacher named Adam Duff. He also goes by Lucid Pixel online. And he basically was talking, he recently made a video about DALL-E, which is an AI image generation app that basically a lot of people are really worried that it's kind of going to shove artists out of the bubble, because the way DALL-E works is it takes an incredible number of images from across the internet, and it will combine them into an image that is supposed to resemble a prompt given by the user. And so you can literally say, I would like a Cape Cod seaside in the style of Van Gogh. And DALL-E is capable of producing an image like that. And so...
Really?
Yeah.
Can I play with it?
Unfortunately, it is limited access at the moment, but I don't know when it's going to be available to the public, if it will be available to the public, but people are worried. There are a lot of artists who are worried that DALL-E is going to push concept artists pretty much out of their own industry.
And who's doing this system?
I don't know.
We have to look that up.
We'll look into it.
I'll take it as homework.
I give you homework now. That's interesting. But Adam Duff, Lucid Pixel, he was talking basically about, his first video was basically talking about how he felt as though AI-generated art didn't have the emotion behind it that human-generated art does, which is something we were talking about earlier. And in his second video, the one that I watched today that he released, he spoke about how he lived through, he was originally a very traditional 2D animator, like pen, paper, cells, like the transparent, it's not like cellophane, is it? I don't study this stuff. He wanted to be like a classical Disney animator. And then Toy Story came out.
I think the term you're looking for is acetates.
Acetates, that's what it is. He wanted to be a very classical Disney animator. And then Toy Story came out. And suddenly 3D animation was everything. And there's an ice cream truck outside.
There's an ice cream truck outside.
Sorry, we just both had a moment. And then Toy Story came out. And the industry shifted from 2D animation to 3D animation with Toy Story. And if you look back on Toy Story today, like the original Toy Story, the animation there is pretty janky compared to what you get today.
But that was the pivot point?
I think that was the original pivot point, because that's one of the first feature-length animated films produced by a major studio in 3D. And it was the first time that technology had been used really at that sort of a scale, at least to my knowledge. And so what Adam, he described what he had to do was basically he was forced by both unemployment and a number of other factors into adapting. But because of his traditional animator background, in adapting to this new program and learning how to use 3D programs and 3D animation, his background in traditional animation actually made him a better 3D animator than the technical artists who only learned using 3D software, because he understood the principles of animation already.
Okay.
And so that sort of allegory, he made that sort of allegory to DALL-E and AI-generated art, in that not only is it a new tool, but it is a tool that artists can adapt and learn to use. Getting 50 AI-generated images, of those 50, maybe 3 to 5 are actually usable as images. But it's not going to be as precise as what a human can do. But a human can take those images and photobash them or paint over them. And it's one of those things where I look at, you see this all the time in engineering spaces and tech spaces, where new technology is created and the industry adapts around it. Right?
Yep.
You see it with the advent of the internet, which you were there for.
Yes, I was.
It's sort of this really interesting dynamic.
Well, I will perhaps surprise you, and perhaps not. There's a similar controversy in the world of engineering and machining. And that is this. Everything made today on machines, with very few exceptions, is made in an automated fashion we colloquially call CNC, which stands for computer numerically controlled. Basically a computer-controlled machine cutting metal and making a thing. Of course, it's programmed by a human, and there's an operator that has to nurse the machine, but basically the machines are cutting. Okay, so how do you learn how to be a CNC machinist? So there's this very vociferous argument underway in the community. One side says you don't have to know how to use a manual machine. You just learn from day one. You're learning how to use a CNC machine. And the other side of the coin is, no, you have to start on a manual machine. You have to learn how to cut metal and what it means to cut metal. Then you can go on to program a machine to cut metal. But unless you've done it on a manual machine, you don't understand it. Okay?
Yeah.
So I'm hearing the same argument here that an AI can't make art because an AI doesn't understand art. But if you're an artist and you teach an AI how to make art and then it makes art, maybe that's more legitimate.
It's also, you talk about, you have to understand what it means to cut metal. You have to understand the principles of the fundamentals, the thing that everybody hates doing in art school, of painting, of drawing, of sculpting. And this is lighting, form, color theory. This also applies to photography.
Oh,
composition.
Absolutely. Yes.
Color balance, that sort of thing. All of these fundamentals. And then when you get to like moving stuff like animation, it's also like squash and stretch and rebound and smear frames and all that. And it is all this stuff.
I'm hearing wonderful words I've never heard before. This is cool.
I will, one of my friends is an animator, and I'm going to ask him at some point for resources, because there are multiple resources for animators and animation out there, because animators are in high demand right now for both video games and films and what have you. but I think it's like the Basic Animator's Toolkit is what it's called, if I'm recalling correctly. There's like there's a number of books, and there's effectively 12 principles of animation that you must adhere to align with sort of the principles of movement to make an animation not only feel realistic, but to make it artistic, to be able to manipulate it in a way to convey what you want to convey. It's not the same as just, say, rotoscoping a thing. Do you know what rotoscoping is?
Yes, I do.
For those at home who do not, rotoscoping is the practice in animation of tracing frame by frame over a video.
I guess maybe I don't know what I mean, I know that a rotoscope was the invention that led to animation.
Yes. So, effectively what you're doing when you're rotoscoping in animation is you are either tracing like the forms, not like every single detail, but just the forms of, something in a video moving in a certain way. Or you are quite literally tracing line for line, shadow for shadow, what is happening. And that it's a common animation technique. It's not cheating. A lot of people in the art community see tracing as cheating. The problem with tracing in the art community is an intellectual property one. It is one of, you're making an attempt to steal someone's art by tracing it and then claiming it as your own. It's not your work, it's somebody else's work that you have crudely copied in a lot of ways. But tracing can be an interesting tool in a lot of respects. If I take a photograph and I trace that photograph, because it's my photo and my trace and my drawing, is that cheating?
But art is replete with people making derivative works, satire, commentary,
so
even evolution of other art.
Everything you're describing falls under fair use. So derivative works oftentimes need to change, and this is a rule of thumb given to me by one of my art teachers, 60 to 70% of the work must be changed or different, or you must make some sort of commentary, whether it's satirical or analytical or whatever, on the work you are drawing from. And that is the difference between expanding upon an intellectual property and using it under fair use, or stealing it, basically. And so I'm sure this is the case with certain engineering things as well, where you have to, in order to expand upon somebody else's idea, you have to add something to it. You have to analyze it. You have to satirize it or criticize it or in some way change it or have some sort of difference between what you are presenting and what they have already presented.
So I actually started a company whose purpose was engineering satire. And it didn't work. We couldn't get funded. So nobody wanted to invest. I don't know why.
I'm going to kick you in the head.
Crickets. So
Crickets, because we don't have a live studio audience.
In engineering, and other business in general, you've brought up the whole issue of intellectual property, which, by the way, I wrote down as a topic for future discussion because I don't think we have time to go into it. You're saying things that are, for example, I don't know if you know this. Mm-hmm. So for those of you playing at home, I've had a lot of experience in patents and patent law and everything surrounding it. I hold a number of patents. And I've worked closely with my attorneys, some of which I've gone to school with. So you can, in patent law, do something we call an improvement patent. Mm. So if let's say you design a widget, I could come along and say, well, if you took that widget and you wrapped it in a wool blanket, it's going to do something really cool. I can go patent taking a widget and wrapping it in a wool blanket, as that's my patent, my claims, okay? But because it's an improvement patent, I cannot practice my patent without your invention. So what's the value? It might not have that much value because I can't do it. Every time I practice my invention, I have to compensate you for your invention, which could be a win for everybody.
Yeah.
Or I can buy your patent and now I get to practice them together. Or you could buy my patent and you could practice them together. And when I say buy, it could also be licensing. So we have these things in patent law, which is an improvement patent.
Yeah.
You can also get a patent from that is not an improvement patent, but it is still based on what we call prior art. So if you've brought forth some art or cited some art, I could then use that art as part of my invention, subject to the things we just talked about. There's yet another thing that happens in engineering and patents that's really crazy. And IBM and other companies, I think HP does this too, or the old HP. Can we have a moment for the old HP? Oh, that was a great company. Sorry, move on. So IBM has done this, and they probably is still doing this, is they develop intellectual property internally, cool inventions that they can go out and get patents on, and then they sit down and they ask this question: should we patent it? That's not an obvious question, okay? Because when you patent something, believe me, you spend a lot of money patenting it, you've spent a lot of money maintaining the patent, and then you have to spend even more money defending the patent against infringers. So IBM looks at their intellectual property developments that come out of their magnificent labs, and they say, you know what? We're not going to develop these inventions. We're going to publish them. And in doing so, IBM puts into the prior art, okay, and makes public disclosure of inventions that they developed, so nobody else can patent it. Okay, so
wow.
So put yourself in their shoes. If they developed and invented this stuff internally that they're not going to develop, what are the choices? Patent it and do nothing with it. Well, that's just
waste of money.
Waste of money, shoving it down the drain. Develop it and keep it a secret. Don't tell anyone.
Maybe somebody else does the same thing.
If somebody else does the same thing and patents it, you're out of luck. Because patent law that says today, that wasn't always true, patent law says it's the first to file. So if you invented this thing, if you invent cold fusion and you say, this is the greatest thing, so keep it a secret. And then somebody down the street does a parallel development and patents it, you're out of luck. Okay? Doesn't matter that by the calendar, you came up with it first.
And then their third option.
The third option is develop it.
Yeah.
Or what IBM is doing is, I guess we're up to 4 options. What IBM is doing is they publish it in a journal and they teach the world about it. That is a public disclosure. Now their competitors cannot patent it because it's in the public domain.
Oh, but anybody can use it and anybody can profit off of it.
Correct. Because IBM knows what I'm about to tell you, which is hard-earned, okay? Hard-earned knowledge, that what's really valuable is the actual business of selling the invention. And that business has momentum.
Yeah.
So that momentum is the value, not the patent.
No, of course.
If you're already 2 miles down the road and somebody's trying to catch up with you, you're 2 miles down the road. So anyway.
Yeah.
So
depends if they have a car, but.
Yeah, if they're crawling, it's not good.
Yeah.
So that's, this whole intellectual property discussion, which we're not going to have right now.
Yeah.
is
we're not gonna have the full extended cut editor's editor's pain.
Right now I'm storyboarding it, and it looks like it's about 5 episodes. And
we're gonna need so between like long form things, we're just gonna have like little clips of highlights of whatever we talk about at this rate.
Either that, or I'm going to go down to the Harvard Law School and run a lecture series, patent law by a disgruntled engineer. You know,
I live close to there. You used to live close to there.
Yeah, well, that's
terrifying.
It is terrifying.
That's utterly terrifying.
But I wouldn't go to Harvard.
No, you just drop out of MIT.
It happens. It happens to the best of us.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Or I can hack Harvard.
Look.
Another episode. Okay, moving on.
No giant wood screws.
That's art.
Yes, it's performance art.
It's performance art.
Actually, it would be a cross between performance and sculpture, but that's another story. Actually, I have a little funny tidbit. I recently was in a digital marketing internship for a nonprofit summer camp thing that I love. I love them. They're great. They're called the Story School. They do live action role play, educational stuff for kids, which basically means they get to run around with swords, hit each other in costume, and learn something while they're at it. Seems like a dream. And so one of the things my supervisor, Chris, told me was that you can justify anything with the word marketing. And I told this to my recently departed, unfortunately, performance teacher, Danielle Abrams. And she was like, yeah, that also applies to performance art. And she was so funny. So there are currently 2 things you can use to justify any actions: marketing and performance art. And sometimes the Venn diagram becomes a circle.
Okay, then I claim that most of my life has been performance art.
For legal reasons, the following is a joke. You've been evading your parole officer.
I thought we were not going to discuss my parole officer.
Again, for legal reasons, that is a joke.
Okay, we'll let that go as fiction. Fiction.
Our sense of humor is...
We have 7 minutes left.
7 minutes left.
I say that because you were about to discuss our sense of humor, which is going to take a lot more than 7 minutes.
To be fair, it's all your fault.
I get that a lot.
Yeah.
So,
you got the paperwork to prove it?
Antennas are art. Let me say that again. Antennas are art. One of my favorite photographers, Ansel Adams, has a famous piece. I think it was from New Mexico. He did a lot of work out in the desert, and it was a TV antenna on a house. Actually, no, I take it back. It was not a TV antenna. It was an antenna we call a batwing antenna, which is a pole-mounted, omnidirectional, vertically polarized, generally VHF antenna. I believe in this particular case, it might have been an FM broadcast antenna. I can't remember, but he took a photograph of it, and it became part of his portfolio. And if you look up Ansel Adams antenna, I think you'll find it. So, as an antenna designer, I could design an antenna that is cool looking, or
whether or not it's functional.
Whether or not it's functional, or functional, whether or not it's cool looking. And sometimes you choose, right? ¿Por qué no los dos? Sometimes you choose, I have to design this antenna to work, but you know what? I'm going to have a little fun. I'm going to also make it cool.
Yeah. I find that with a lot of sort of scientific, mechanical, what have you, endeavors, in order to not burn out entirely, you you say this to me all the time. You gotta make your own fun. And it's true. But also one of the things that you can do and this is the beauty of, having the freedom to create and make and just dick around is the best kind of phrase I have for it. In that sort of freedom, you do have the opportunity to not only make it functional, but also make it look cool. That's one of the cool things that I enjoy about, I've been going down a bit of a rabbit hole with like tiny houses, which is another topic for another time, where every single thing in a small dwelling, whether it is a studio or one bedroom apartment, or if it's like a tiny house on the back of a trailer bed, or if it's a shipping container home that's been renovated from a shipping container into something that can just get plopped down from a trailer bed. Everything in those homes have some sort of function in addition to form. And those, he's looking at the microphone again. Those sorts of intersections of form and function, you see it a lot in furniture design and architecture, where the engineering factor of making sure it has a function and making sure it's not going to fall apart intersects with the design sensibilities of aesthetics and what kind of historical period am I evoking? What kind of aesthetic or movement am I evoking? Do I just want this to look cool according to my design tastes? Or am I following a client's orders? Like, how that sort of evolves is also really fun.
So in the world of machining and engineering in general, it has been my experience that the equipment in machining, it's the machines that are really good at what they do, like really, really good at what they do, happen to also be very beautiful.
Yeah.
And, as an example, you look at machines made by Monarch. The Monarch 10EE is the classic, oh my God, I want that lathe.
I look at your Bridgeport.
So the Bridgeport's another example. It is, there's elements of art in it. We take it for granted sometimes, but the Monarch 10EE, you would look at it. You haven't seen one, but
no.
I'll have to put you in front of one soon. You would look at that and you'd say Art Deco. It's Art Deco. There's elements of design on it. It literally is Art Deco.
And one of the things that I do want to point out is this goes back to when something is crafted with care, whether it's a technical drawing or a machine, or it's like a handmade piece of clothing or furniture or whatever. When something is crafted with care, you can tell because that shines through. And I think that's where, when you say antennas are art or machines are art, it is not necessarily that these things sort of try to assert some sort of aesthetic beyond they're industrial, they're functional, they're covered in oil and coolant. You can tell that these machines are well made and oftentimes are well cared for by the people who use them. And that in and of itself becomes a sort of art, because there's an art to maintaining things, to making sure that they function in such a way that they can keep doing what they do for years and years and years. You see that with, say, old steam trains, or you can see it with art restoration and the process of maintaining or restoring old paintings. There are so many videos on YouTube of people doing these very satisfying art restorations. It's so cool. But that's also an art in and of itself. And I think art isn't necessarily in the object, it's in the practice.
Wow.
Boom.
So
I think that's where we end it. I think that's where we have to end it.
So I think it's appropriate to point out, because I haven't pointed it out on this recording, that we're recording this with an iPad for video, and that iPad is being held by a Hermann Schmidt grinding vise.
Which so many people are going to be mad at you for.
And that's a work of art.
I will...
You have to trust me on this.
I will keep my mouth shut, because I do
But
not...
that's one of the Hermann Schmidt tools.
Yes.
Have a long history, and they're one of the things that we touch and feel and go, oh, this is awesome. And it's just this beautiful execution of a tool, and you could take another, buy another one, another tool for 1/5 the price, and you look at it and go, yeah, what a piece of crap. But the Hermann Schmidt is like, oh, you want to touch it and feel it, look at it. So
I also have another topic for us to discuss at a later date.
What's that?
The machine you found. Once you get to the end of that saga, we need to do that as a dramatic retelling, because that machine, I think, is a work of art by virtue of its history.
It really is. Let's leave that as a surprise.
Yeah.
Or if our listeners or viewers want to go do some research, they could probably figure out what we're talking about. But yes, that and one of the reasons I bought it was it is a work of art.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that. We'll close it on.
Art is not in the object; it's in the practice.
Whew. And on that note.
Thank you.
It was fun.
I think this is going to be a fun little side project for the both of us.
So
or maybe it's the main project.
It could be the main project.
Who knows?
What's coming up for you?
Well, sometime tomorrow I head back to school, and I am currently in summer classes at the time of recording, and I am very much eager to just kind of continue working. I'm currently in the process of developing my portfolio for internship applications at various game studios, which is a process that is more complicated than anyone gives it credit for.
So where can people find your portfolio, and where can people find your services?
Both my portfolio and services are available on my website, Conjette.art. That is CONJETTE.ART. My portfolio is under, portfolios. There are a couple of them there. And my services are under commissions, which I offer a variety of different services.
There's dozens and dozens of people out there that are going to wonder why it's called Conjette, and we'll tell them another time.
That's going to be that's a whole other... When we start talking about games and our relationship with each other in games, that's going to be a hilarious episode.
Extra spatial.
We might have to invite a couple of guild members.
So I go back to work on Monday.
Yeah.
Actually, I go back to work every day.
Yeah, that's the thing about being a freelancer. It never
I have
stops.
2 businesses. Business number 1 is my antenna business, which is Antennasis.
Antennasis.
Antenna, S-Y-S. Antennasis.com is the website. And then my machine shop business, which is Kinetic Precision, which is, of course, kineticprecision.com, where I do a bunch of things, but the one I'm most famous for is making PFG stones.
Very flat rocks.
Very flat rocks. You can check it out at pfgstones.com. And PFG is just like it sounds. PFG.
It's PFG.
Yeah. And I could be found on the Instagram at Spencer_web_NH. And I could be found on the YouTube at Spencer. Well, the active YouTube right now is Kinetic Precision NH.
But you also have another YouTube, which may or may not become whatever.
Well, it's Spencer Webb. It's just Spencer Webb, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how you can find me on the intertubes. Good job.
Yay!
From the engineer.
And the illustrator.
Take care.
Peace out. I can't believe that worked.
Super secret audio, super secret audio, super secret audio. I do funny voices.